super thrilled today to be here with this esteemed panel to chat about all things sustainability as it relates to our industry. I would love for everyone here to introduce themselves, and we'll start with you, Melissa.
Thanks, Alan. I'm Melissa Joy Manning. I'm the CEO and founder of Melissa Joy Manning, a socially and environmentally responsible fine fashion designer jewelry brand.
And I'm Annika Dubrall. I lead sustainability and philanthropy for Tiffany Co.
I'm Tracy Reese. I'm the founder and creative director of Hope for Flowers, a responsibly designed clothing brand with a sustainable mission in Detroit.
And I'm Sarah Luisi. I lead strategic sourcing for LVMH Americas, and I have a heavy focus on sustainable sourcing initiatives.
So Sarah, first question's for you. What values are top of mind for you when your team at LVMH thinks about today and tomorrow?
So from a sourcing standpoint, what's top of mind for us is always responsible manufacturing practices, a heavy focus on environmental management systems, tracking, traceability, eco-design. So it's pretty much a broad spectrum, but LVMH is heavily focused on creating products in harmony with nature, preserving ecosystems, and engaging all stakeholders, which is exactly why Annika and I are here with you today.
Can you share with us a little bit more about LVMH's Life 360 initiatives and its roadmap?
So from a creating products in harmony with nature standpoint, a few examples would be partnering with the regions that we source materials from on regenerative initiatives. So for instance, LVMH has an initiative by 2030 to preserve and work towards regenerative initiatives of over 12 million acres of flora and fauna. So from a beauty perspective, what we extract from the earth, these raw materials to make the fine fragrances and beauty products, we're giving back to the earth to make sure that we have that balance.
That's great. I think it's so important when we think about sustainability and think about what we're taking and what we're giving back, because I think oftentimes people just think about how they're taking rather than the give back part of it.
Exactly, and then to go a step further, that's the raw material. But when you think about the primary packaging, we're partnering with suppliers, for example, on glass, which is a primary commodity, to outfit their manufacturing locations to be sustainable, to be powered by clean energy, to recycle and reuse brown water. And preserve the land around the manufacturing site. So we go that extra mile because it's very important to us. The reality of the situation is that we're all heavily engaged. Yes. Every single stakeholder, from senior leadership down to line manager, has this top of mind. Anything and everything we do, we're thinking about the sustainability and corporate responsibility attached to it.
Something that LVMH is doing, something that Tiffany Co. is doing, and all of the maisons within LVMH is we're weaving the sustainability narrative into the desirability and the luxury narrative. Yep. So we talk about packaging, for example. Tiffany Co. has our iconic blue bags and blue boxes. Those are recyclable. They're made of recycled materials. They're Forest Stewardship Council certified. All of that while also being luxurious, the iconic blue, and a part of every purchase that is made in every Tiffany Co. store.
Yeah, I love that, because whenever I think about these topics that we're talking about, it's how do we make sustainability luxury, and how do we weave it into luxury, and at the same time not have any compromises to the product itself or the luxuriousness or the beauty of the product? Because I think that that's the way that we're going to really create impact, is by demonstrating to consumers that they don't have to make compromises.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
It doesn't have to be a trade-off. It's not one or the other.
Yes, because I think people view it as being mutually exclusive, where it's like, in order to be sustainable, then you have to sacrifice all this other stuff. And I think when we think about these things, it's, well, how do we make it so that we don't have to sacrifice all of this other stuff, and we can still make things beautiful?
And that's a huge topic of discussion, even with packaging. If we use this material, what is the texture like? What is the perception of the consumer like? It's more porous, so it absorbs that Tiffany blue in a certain way, and does that give the right rendition of color? So, we have all of these conversations top of mind, but at the end of the day, it's an imperative, right? So people, planet first, right? Without planet, we can't sell products. So, sustainability is luxury. It's an imperative. It has to be. And I think, LVMH is passionate about bringing that savoir-faire excellence of the way that we bring these products to market in the same way that we have the artisan and craftsmanship to create the products.
One of the things we're always talking about at CFDA is how do we make this sexy for consumers? How do we make it a must-have? How do we keep it top of mind? Because I think if they think it's all granola and beige with little specks of nature, they're not into it, So how do we make it sexy for them? How do we have people rapping about responsibility in consumerism? How do we, we have to kind of make people want to come into this world and be a part of it. And, we all want to be giving more than we take, in life and business. And how do we promote that thinking, and make it sexy?
I think that's one of the hardest things about sustainability actually is, great design solves problems. So any great designer can take materials that are responsible and create a beautiful product that drives consumer behavior to purchase. It's how do we tell the story in a way that is non-combative and interesting and engaging, and to your point, Tracy, sexy, so that a consumer understands and thinks about why they're buying something. It's like I used to talk to customers at trunk shows 20 odd years ago about responsibility and design, and people's eyes would glaze over and wander away. So trying to figure out that cadence of communication and the touch point, I think, is so important to our industry right now in order to convey the importance of consumer behavior, because it's a supply-demand economy, right? And if we can encourage people to ask for better supply, demand it, then we can have more of a trickle down and it becomes less sustainable. It becomes incorporated more into culture in general.
One of the things we're so passionate about in Detroit, where my business is located, is educating the community on their choices and trying to pull them away from the need to, have to buy and waste, buy and waste. It's like, what about saving, buying something better, and keeping it longer? And we're going to give classes on how you can mend, the things that you have that you love so that you can wear them again. And I want to educate you on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, because I want you to have agency to advocate for a better future for yourself and your family and your community. But I think, engaging people in ways that you're not coming at them with the big S, you know what I mean? It's like, this is really about you and my hopes for you and your family and your community. If you're educated, you're going to make wiser choices. You're going to make more compassionate choices. And you're going to, we start with 7 to 12-year-olds. It's like, this is what fast fashion is. And it's a wasteful cycle that impacts people of color all over the world, keeping them living below the poverty line. Okay, so when you're making these choices, you're making that choice for your sisters and brothers all over the world. Is that okay with you? And that's a message that hits home, actually. And, but we need to give people tools to create things for themselves, to care for what they have, and to understand, the broader picture of the power of their choices.
Quality is luxury. And, LVMH, in our strive to create circular economies, we pride ourselves on the quality of the products, and we have programs to perpetuate the life cycle of that product, right? Refurbishing programs to create that, circular economy. So I think, even though we're meeting today for the first time, our messages, there's an alignment in this messaging. Definitely. It's very powerful.
Definitely.
And Tiffany & Company has been engaged in circularity efforts longer than we've used the term circularity. We've been talking about extending the life cycle of a product, so keeping it for generations and generations and generations. We completed 500,000 repairs last year on Tiffany product. Some of it purchased last year, some of it purchased 50 years ago. And around the globe, you can get your Tiffany jewelry repaired. so that you can extend the lifespan of that product and create more of a circular environment and a commitment.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that, because I'm just a believer that if we can keep something in circulation for longer, that's kind of the most sustainable thing, right? Because oftentimes we think about, what are all these next gen technologies? How can we recycle things? Fiber to fiber recycling. And I think to myself, I'm like, wow, that should be the last resort, right? Like recycling something should be the last resort. What we really should be doing is thinking about, on apparel, mend and repair, on bags, mend and repair, right? And fixing things, because there's a lot of life still left in everything that we consume on a daily basis. So how do we continue to use it? How do we keep it in circulation? Because that's far lower impact than grinding something up to make a new material.
As a jeweler, I think that it's uniquely specific to me in particular is heirloom quality jewelry, right? And I've actually stopped buying upfront stones. I used to have warehouse stones, diamonds in my safe, so when people came in, they could choose a stone for a custom design. I encourage people now to look through their jewelry box. What do they have from their family? What heirlooms exist that we can actually take apart, and redesign into something new that has not only an honor to the environment and creating something better, but has a history that exists.
How meaningful.
Yes.
Right. And being able to sit down and speak with them, then you can really talk about making those kind of choices, and that we all have enough. But if we want something different, why don't we just think about changing what we have?
Yes.
We all want to be unique individuals in terms of expression, but we come from a long history of tradition within our own families and industry in general. And if we can take what we have and make it part of us anew, it's encompassing that history and that sense of self and identity in a different way than solely buying something that's marketed towards you to tell you that you should look a certain way. But it's the ultimate expression of style and individuality, I think.
Exactly.
But the idea too of buying something that's at a level of quality that you want to pass it down, that you want to share it, that you want to keep it in the family, that's something that we used to strive for. I mean, and I know my parents always were focused on, because we would receive gifts of clothing from family friends. My sister would wear them, then I would wear them. It would pass down to my cousin. I mean, these were the good things, right?
Yeah.
And it would come back to our house for my younger sister, and it would go on and on. And that's a beautiful thing, because memories come with those pieces, but they were quality. They stood the test of time. They were classic enough. And I truly believe in that. I always want to be creating pieces that you want to keep and wear. I love seeing customers who come up to me and say, I've had this dress for 15 years, I still wear it, I still love it, I get compliments, and I think as a community in terms of design and product design and marketing, that's what we should be striving for. Things that last, that have meaning in our customers' lives, that they want to take care of.
So if we could change one thing about fashion's current climate GPS as we navigate towards 2030 and 2050, what would that be?
I'd like to hone in on more of exactly what it is that we're doing to change that barometer, and it's really focusing our efforts far upstream on eco-design, right? So it's really getting it at the point of inception so that it kind of drives the narrative for what comes downstream. We have a huge initiative across all of these maisons, and Tiffany, just naturally because of your raw materials, you're already there. But every single maison is heavily focused on how do we create these products at this level of luxury with this much affinity, but from a very eco mindset standpoint, eco materials, and how do we create that biocircularity from the inception point. So I think, if there's one thing that I would like to see the world change is I'd like to see every manufacturer, every designer, every creative doing that and taking a look at the materials that you're sourcing, making sure that that material is being put back into the earth, but it's a biocircular material, and your manufacturing process is environmentally safe and sustainable. And the way that you get those goods to market has a low carbon footprint with reduced CO2 emissions. So if I could change one thing, it would be for everyone to work in this way and adopt this mindset.
We can sit here in a microcosm and talk about fashion, but until we can have a larger cultural shift. I mean, it's the strawberry conversation, right? So it's how do we do that? And as innovators and change makers, how do we not only lead fashion, but how do we create a shift
But fashion
culturally?
leads other industries.
Yes.
And that's the thing that we always have to remember, how much power fashion
Yes,
has.
our voice.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
Yep.
fashion leads every industry.
Yep.
And in the interim, we're taking great strides to educate and empower our employees across the value chain.
Always so important.
Yeah.
Within LVMH, every Maison has made a commitment to educating every employee on climate and the Life 360 goals. And so at Tiffany & Company, that's over 14,000 people that become aware of our commitments to climate and traceability.
But also encouraging employees and your broader community to kind of live it at home. You know, we start with that at Hope for Flowers. You know, it's like, okay, in our office, we compost, we recycle, we're tamping down on waste, and we're educating our community. And I think that we have to be the best example in our own daily lives.
That's
and
right.
encourage that among our employees and our,
in our corporate
greater community.
offices.
Exactly.
I mean, we're exploring now Green Pantry. I don't know if Tiffany has instituted it, but at LVMH, we're looking to start here, but build a program that we can roll out across all Maisons. What does that look like? What does that mean? What can we learn from that? What are the practices we can put in place in our offices, at the stores, so on and so forth? So we're looking at that. It's important. You're right. We have to practice what we preach in every and all aspects. And from a client-facing perspective, when you think about stores, we're bringing that to stores as well with our sustainable store planning. So you're exactly right. Head office, corporate culture, but what does the client see? Most recently we had a collaboration with Florida Power and Light Miami Design District, where we talked about this program that's in place where in that district, all of the consumption is powered by clean energy. And this is something unbeknownst to all of us that Florida Power and Light has been working to build for the past 20 years.
So
So
not
there's
something you'd expect in Florida.
no, but they're in the forefront pioneering that space.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So I think, there's so much that can be done, but we have to find a way, and this is part of the Life 360 roadmap, to do that in any and all aspects.
And again, weaving it into the brand promise.
Yes.
I was just at the Landmark, which is just down the street from here. 10 floors of luxury, as our CEO likes to say. One might have said that it was a store at one point, and it's an experience, it's an art gallery, it's an opportunity to engage with our product. It's also LEED Gold certified. We capture rainwater on the roof. We have 100% LED lighting. We have electricity monitoring. And we balance that electricity load with renewable energy credits across the United States. So again, it's about showing up to the consumer in an authentic and consistent way, but weaving it into the way that we show up, the way that we do business, the way that
Making it
we
sexy.
engage. I would also say that we continue to need to build business cases for sustainability investment,
Yes.
particularly when
Yeah.
goals are 2030, 2040, and maintaining pace
Yes.
on our, in the case of Tiffany & Company, our net zero commitments in particular. We continue to treat it like a piece of the business.
Sure.
I can't take for granted that every investment that I recommend will be approved.
Of course. Yeah.
Unfortunately, with economies of scale, some things that used to feel unachievable, too expensive, are now more achievable.
Yes.
So my hope is that that technology, that
Trickles down.
advancement continues
Yes.
as there are more corporations, more governments engaging, et cetera.
It's great that we're talking about change. And Tracy, the next question is for you. Is like, what was the pivotal moment for you that led you to, think about starting Hope for Flowers?
I had a brand, Tracy Reese, and another brand, Plenty by Tracy Reese, for like 20 plus years here in New York. And we did all the traditional things. We had a retail store in the West Village. We had Japanese distribution. We had licenses, you name it. And it was sort of the industry playbook. This is what you do as a contemporary brand. I was learning about fashion's impact in the world in terms of, abusive supply chain and raw materials and all the ecological abuses. And I was thinking, I'm in this industry and I love what I do. And how can I do it in a way that is more respectful and more intentional. And I was lucky enough to be part of a cohort of the CFDA Lexus Fashion Initiative, and it was basically a crash course in sustainable design that we went through. Our cohort was 9 months, the ones previous were 18 months, but it was an awakening for me. And we were charged with writing a blueprint for how we wanted to take our businesses forward. And I knew I needed to create a new business. It's easier to start a new business with a responsible platform than it is to re-steer a going concern. And that's an unfortunate truth, but it is. And I thought, okay, if I'm going to do this, I don't have to be in New York. I believe that having a social impact, a community impact, along with commercial impact is equally important. So I wanted to do it in my hometown, which is Detroit. And, you know, we're in a different world now. We can work from anywhere. But I thought if I can be in Detroit, I can talk about sustainability. I can talk about sustainable life tools. I can share what I'm learning with the community. I feel like the Black community especially gets left out of this conversation a little bit, and sustainability can feel very elitist. It can feel like it's out of reach, like you don't have the resources to participate in buying sustainably made products. But it's like, okay, but you do have the resources to turn off the lights in the room that you're not in. You have the resources to recycle, you know, your plastic bottles and maybe not buy so many, you know, plastic bottles, single-use plastics. You have the right to understand that 80% of the people making your clothing are women, and 80% of those women are people of color, and that they're not making a living wage. They're not able to feed their families. They're not able to buy the things that you can buy. So you have a right to know so that you can make informed decisions. So, you know, I knew I wanted to have a community mission. So we teach sustainable life tools. We have community workshops. We teach art enrichment for young people, because nobody, I mean, this is like spoonful of sugar, okay? Talking about sustainability is like medicine, you know, not the good kind, the yummy kind, it's the icky kind, you know. So it's like, we're teaching art enrichment, we're using upcycled materials, we're talking about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, you know, and it's like, people have to learn young, but we also teach it to adults. We create community, and that community can take care of the spaces that we're living in, that we're doing business in, you know, and then they can spread the word to their community. So we're all about, you know, balancing, you know, our impact in our community. We want to be giving more than we take, along with, you know, how we're working as a brand and how we're existing in this industry by, you know, we produce less, we cut to sales. You know, we do a lot of things ourselves in-house. We just launched an expert sewer apprenticeship because I'm importing pretty much everything, you know, from the East, and I want to be able to make things domestically. I want to be able to make things in Detroit, but we have to get the skills set, the skills level up. So we have a Department of Labor registered expert sewer apprenticeship, and we're starting to do some small batch production in Detroit. So, you know, it's like trying to share all these messages, trying to inform young people, give them agency, give them the tools that they need, make them aware that they can make a difference even in the smallest way. And I think that when people understand that what they can do personally does make a difference, because collectively it makes a huge difference, you know, then we can sort of break down some of that sort of elitist thinking and make this something that is accessible to everyone.
Yeah, I think what you're doing is what I refer to as creating cultural platforms rather than just creating brands. Like, what you're trying to do is create this entire community, this culture, right? And every single movement that we've had always starts at the cultural level. And if you're able to build that cultural level, then you can really create change. So, you know, I certainly think it's like everything that we've talked about here today. We've talked about collaboration, we've talked about change, and really what it all boils down to is like, how do we create that community? What is the low-hanging fruit? How do we create this community so that it's pervasive amongst like all brands, all society, so that we're thinking about this stuff collectively.
I mean,
Yeah.
I started my business solely on that kind of tenet of creating community. I'm an academically trained jeweler. I graduated from college and had no idea what I was going to do with my life, right? I'm an artist and thought that what was I going to do with it, right? I worked in high-end retail. I love fashion. And it was like, well, maybe I should start a jewelry company. And I went to a entrepreneurial school and learned how to, position product, price it, and sat down with quite a few different consultants when I presented my business plan and said that everything I was going to make was going to be made onshore. And this was post-NAFTA. This was like 95. And everybody looked at me and were like, there's no way. There's absolutely no way that you're going to be able to have a viable business. And I have the personality type that you tell me no, I'm going to find a yes. And so I started my business, 25, so much hubris, and just thought that I could make a difference in my community. I did. I started hiring other jewelry designers, other jewelry students, and teaching them how to make production jewelry. And one of the greatest challenges with that was also the biggest opportunity, is at some point, once they became trained and once they were like, oh, I can look at me, like she did it, I can do it too. Yeah. I mean, this is pre-Etsy, this was pre-internet, and there were very few fashion fine jewelers. I mean, David Yurman was like, created the industry and like had such a, there's a vacuum, it didn't exist yet. So we just started training people and then we just watched them all leave. And that's challenging, right, as a small business. But I thought of what you thought about, is like, well, if this is going to happen, what can I do to advocate for the best possible change with what is important to me? And that was to mentor these people who left. So many of the people who left and started their own businesses, then they started mentoring people who left and started their businesses. And so now there's a whole chain. Yeah, there's a whole group, a whole chain of us who still share information and talk about things that, have brands in the industry. And, we are competitive, right? And we want that consumer dollar, so we don't have to bootstrap everything in to keep our lights on. But at the same level, to understand that community isn't just the consumer, it's the other designers too, right? And that we collectively can make that difference that we need. And for me, like, I've always placed more importance sometimes on creating that community than creating the business. And that's a challenge, right? Because I want to advocate for change, but I still want to have a business because I love what I do. But I think the community piece, Tracy, you're talking about is so incredibly important. And what we're doing here right now is creating a bigger one.
Yeah, and you're doing so much more. So you're creating community, you're bringing that education, you're changing the dynamic, but also when you think about the importance of fair treatment of women through the supply and value chains, there are some areas in the world where women don't even have direct access to their wages. So when you mention that to me at my level, and I've been doing this for 19 years in this group, to hear you with your business make that communication, right there, it's powerful. Like, positive change is on the horizon, and not only for what we're doing domestically, but to help those issues that women have through value and supply chain because of where smaller organizations, and in some cases even larger organizations that have lack of awareness, are sourcing from, right? So I think it's impactful. And also nearshoring and onshoring. It's something that we're doing in an effort to cut CO2 emissions. So you're creating that community, but also when you produce nearshore and onshore, your CO2 emissions, your carbon footprint is much, much less. Right. You're not transiting from the other side of the world.
Right. And hopefully you can pour the cost of all of that transit into living wages.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think it was a great conversation, and I think, I feel excited but determined. Yes. Yeah. Determined to deliver transformative change that is not only good for the group, but for you all. And I think, we can figure a way to work together to do just that while supporting our brand IDs and initiatives and respecting competitive advantage amongst us.
And what I'm hearing at this table is so much agility, so much entrepreneurship, which you may well take for granted, but is something that we're looking to infuse into our operations at Tiffany & Company. We need that agility, we need that entrepreneurship or that entrepreneurial approach in order to achieve our 2030 and our 2040 targets. Because it's definitely a marathon to achieve net zero, to significantly reduce our carbon emissions. It's going to be a journey that takes lots of small changes building upon each other, increasing our client awareness, and then of course working collaboratively to drive true results.
For me, this is just hugely encouraging, and I think, to Melissa's point, it's a challenge, and to Alan's point, when you're a small business, to kind of keep your hat in the ring and keep walking the talk. We have to actually do what we're talking about, and there are so many hard decisions that impact the bottom line, impact the security of our employees, but it's encouraging to know that we're not in it alone. And to know that we're working for solutions together that will hopefully ease the way for us down the road and for the people who are coming after us.